Okay, so in this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to track a point to form a mask for our CG element here. So in this setup here, we have our diffuse, we have our ambient occlusion, the self shadow, and the ground shadow that has been rendered. Okay, and you can see the ground shadows here, and it's been placed in this scene here very nicely. However, we have an issue where we have part of the this playground here, this electronic playground here, blocking the virtual astronaut here. So we need to create a mask, okay, to mask out this section here. And there's a very slightly faster way, right, to create a tracker and use that tracker to drive the mask rather than animating the mask throughout the stage where this 3D element is blocked. All right, so now we want to start by creating a tracker node. Okay, go ahead and create a tracker node. Link the tracker node's background to the plate itself, the live plate, in this case, our video clip here, which is in the form of an image sequence. So double click on the tracker, and you should be able to see all the tracker's menu items above here. And the first thing is we want to inspect the footage, scrub the footage back and forth, and then try to take note of where the astronaut, at which point in time where the astronaut is being obscured. Okay, because we only need the tracker until about frame 185. Okay, because this is where the astronaut appears again behind this mask. Right. So the object that I can see very clearly is this this screw nut here. So if this is a tree trunk, you need to find a spot on the tree trunk to track. Okay. So now I identified this. Now you notice that the playback, the speed, the response of Nuke is a little bit slow. That's because it is actually going through all these merge nodes at every time I scrub. So this will actually affect the performance of your tracker. So what I suggest you do is temporarily disable all the nodes. You can select all of them and then press D. Okay. So now all these nodes are disabled and we can just concentrate on the tracker. I don't need this node for now, so I'll just disable it. So right now we just focus on the background and the tracker. So we have already identified this screw here as a good tracking candidate. So we're going to create a track. Okay, so press Control Alt and left mouse click to create a track point. So position the track point over the object that you want to track. Go over to the settings, okay, and open up auto tracking. And there are different types of trackers that you can, or auto track functions that you can enable. So translate means that it will just track for patterns that are moving around. Okay, and if you click on the drop down menu here, it shows you translate and rotate. That means you will track for things that will move and rotate at the same time. This one, move and change in scale, or translate, rotate, and scale. And I like to use this one, affine. Okay, affine, right, will also track for distortion. That means if there is motion blur of the object is distorted due to change in perspective. So I'm going to use affine. All right. So you can also adjust the threshold. So if the pattern doesn't look the same after a certain threshold, it will stop tracking. So you can adjust these values. But I think generally I'm going to stick with affine, and then I will start tracking. So I'm going to adjust the scale of the tracker. So I'm going back to tracker, and then maybe I'm just going to bring it down slightly. Okay, and then now I'll just hit track. Okay, the shortcut key is a V key to track forward, or you can press on this button. Now observe this window here and make sure that your track stays in the middle as much as possible. Now if it overshoots a little bit, it's still fine because we are not tracking this to solve for the camera motion. Okay, we are tracking this so that we can attach or stick the mask to it. So right now you can notice it stopped tracking at about frame 89. So all you need to do is just adjust the tracker a little bit. Okay, you might want to change the search pattern, make it a little bit bigger, or reduce the search area. Okay, and then continue to search again. Okay, and if it moves out of place, just move it back into place okay, and then continue to track. Okay, so now it moves out again, so I'll just continue to track. Okay, at this point you can see it begins to track obviously the spot that is not what we want. So I'm going to move back to the last good track that he has found, and then I'm going to use the delete anything that is after this track. So click on this button here, and then anything after 115 is deleted. Okay, so I know that there is going to be some issues tracking this area. I'm going to try my luck by adjusting it again and trying to track forward. Okay, again, it goes haywire, so I'm not going to trust that frame onwards. Okay, from 115 after, I'm going to delete. But this time, I'm going to scrub forward towards the timeline until to frame 185, where I know that my 3D element, my CG element is coming out behind this area. And then I'm going to move the tracker to track to the spot which I want it to track. And this time, instead of tracking forward, I can track backwards. So I'm going to click on track backwards, which is the shortcut key is the Z key. So go ahead and track backwards. And so far, so good. It's sticking. Okay, now I move out a little bit. Now I'm going to change the size of the pattern a little bit more, make it a little bit bigger, and track backwards again. Okay, so there's a bit of motion blur that stalls the tracker. Okay, maybe I want to reduce the pattern size and search area and then track again. Okay, I'm going to use my shortcut key. That'll be much faster than clicking here. Okay, it's tracking a few frames and then it just stops. Tracking a few frames and then it stops. Okay, we're getting somewhere, and finally we're almost nearing the end, and there's still a few more frames here. So the things that really bothers the tracker is this motion blur here. So of course, you want to try your best to keep the track as accurate as possible. Okay, a few more frames there. The one seems a bit off. I'm going to just manually track that one. Now you can use your cursor keys. If you use your cursor keys, right, you're not really tracking, you are manually tracking. Okay, and yeah. Okay, so if you want to nitpick, you can use your cursor key to navigate every single frame to make sure that they really stick to the spot that you want. All right, and you can like do a double track. Okay, now I'm tracking this backwards, and I think I can stop there because everything is centralized now. Now, if it's off a little bit, it's fine. Okay, only time that you want to adjust is when this tracker just goes out way too much, and if that happens, right, then you will affect your mask. All right, so we got our tracker done, and we can keep it aside. Now, to hide all these menu items, just go over to your tracker properties and click on this drop down arrow on the over here, and then everything should disappear. Okay, so now we want to create a Roto Mask, okay, so that it can be driven by the tracker. So I'm going to go to frame 1, and I'm going to draw a mask that follows this pole here. So we're going to create a Roto Mask. Just press O. The shortcut key is O. Okay, and we're going to link the background to the live plate here. And with the Roto node selected, okay, you are already in creation mode. So this is how you do it. Okay, click and release, click and drag to create a curve, click and drag to create a curve. Okay, click and release to create a sharp corner. Okay, click and drag to create a curve. Click and release a sharp corner, click and release a sharp corner, click and drag to create a curve. Okay, and then click and release to create a curve. Then click, and then if you want to finish this, you can press enter to close the mask. All right, so a little bit about the tools here. So if you click on one of the controllers, Okay, you notice this needle here. This one allows you to control the softness of the edge or the feathering. Okay, now if you want to control the properties of the curve, right, you can press Z. If you press Z, it will smoothen it out, and also it will show you the control handles. Now, if you want to control the handles independently, you hold down the control key to round this up. Okay, so if I want to see the control handles, you press Z. Z for zebra or zoo. Then click on click on control to control the handles. Now, this other handle actually controls the feathering, so make sure you select the correct one. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now, at this stage, you notice the roto, it changes blue in the spline key. So every time you create the spline or you move the spline, you will generate, or rather move the spline vertices, you will generate all the, okay, I'm going to press Z, it will generate the first keyframe for you, right? So I'm going to select this, I'm going to press Z so that I can, holding down the control, then I can adjust these handles, all right? Okay, press Z here, holding down the control. Okay, I'm trying to make this mask as good as I can. Now, obviously, you will need to spend time to really get a very good mask. And also, this video resolution is at full HD, but once you zoom in, you can see there's a bit of blurriness at the edges. Okay, but okay, I'm happy with this mask. All right, so now we want to attach this mask. All right, we can rename it by double clicking on this. I call it the playground pole. And now we want to use the trackers, the first tracker that we did to drive this mask. So go and select the roto node, click on transform. Now, because we already created this mask and we adjusted these values, right, it will automatically generate a key in the first frame. We want to get rid of all these keys. So go over to the spanner tool here, right mouse click on it, and click on no animation on all knobs. Okay, Nuke is going to say, do you want to delete all animation? Say yes. Okay, now everything is clear. Now, we want to bring in the tracker animation information to drive this translate. So click on the animation button here, link to, and click on tracker linking dialog, and link to the translate, the tracker one, because right now we only have one tracker. Then link to tracker as offset, translate as offset. Okay, the default is translate or position, but you can change it to translate as offset, and click OK. Okay, so now the mask is linked to the movement of the tracker, and you can see it actually sticks pretty close. Now, the only drawback is that it will not change the scale and it will not change the shape. For that, you will have to add keyframes. Okay, so right now I'm ready to add some keyframes. I know my last frame is at 185. Okay, so obviously I need to scale this up. I need to move these points down to the bottom. So I can change the scale by adjusting the scale here. Or you can also go to Roto. Now, if I do not want to touch all this here, you can also concentrate all your animation on just the spline key animation. Now, to do that, make sure you select all the control points. You can actually scale it up. Okay, if you hold down the control, you can actually scale it up uniformly. All right, you can also still move this. Okay, and the good thing is that you can select groups of control points and you can rotate them and move them into place. Okay, then you can individually adjust them to match the shape of your mask. Okay, and then this top part here, I'm going to just rotate it slightly and move it and adjust it. All right. And you notice on the timeline here, a blue dot will appear. That means that I have added a keyframe. Added a keyframe animation to this mask. All right. So I'm going to set this up nicely. Okay, this box is very easy to understand. You just need to click on the center to move, to the corner to rotate, the sides to scale. So it makes it very convenient. Okay, so now I created this mask. I'm satisfied with this. It also generates this key for me. So I got one key at the first frame and one key at 185. And let's scrub the timeline and see how the mask performs. Okay, it's actually not too bad. It's following the scale. Okay, of course, I need to set more keys. Okay, maybe I'll set one more key at frame 100. So I'm going to select all these and just move them into place. Okay, the bottom mask points, I just rotate and move them into place. These 2 points here, drag it down until it match. So you don't have to set keys or anything like that, because the every time you change the shape, a key will be generated. A keyframe will be generated. So remember, a keyframe is something that happens in the course of time. All right, when you change the keyframe, you are changing the parameters or values. In this case, we are changing the values of the bezier control handles. Okay, I'm happy with this, and let's proceed on and see. If you look closely at the timeline, there's a blue dot here. Okay, that means an animation key has been planted there. So let's scrub to frame 50 and see how it goes. All right, we need to adjust this a little bit. So go over here and move this up. Okay, I don't want to move the handles. I want to move the cross here. So if you cannot grab the cross properly, just zoom in and grab it. Okay, let me just reset this by pressing. Oops. Okay, I'm not supposed to be creating another. Okay, I'm going to leave this at that and just move this into place. Okay, so that's frame 50. So gradually in between, you start to put in more frames. You can see between 50 and 100, the keyframe actually works very well. It's actually sticking close to the mask very well. Except when just before 100, I see it start to bend out of place. So find an area which you need to adjust and then adjust accordingly. See, this is what I need to do. I just select and then rotate, and then it sets a key for me now. Okay, this one I'll just do another rotation here and then move it into place. Okay, so you can see everything is coming along just fine. Okay, now I need to put some keyframes between frame 100 and frame 185, because you can see the transitioning here from straight to curve. Okay, and then maybe another one more here. So once you get the hang of this, you can do this pretty fast. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, again, this one can take a while. So I'm just going to adjust a few more frames and then I'm just going to stop at this. And then I'm going to continue in setting up the merge settings for the roto. Okay, those of you who are watching this video, you can speed this up if it's too slow for you. But I'm just trying to get as many keyframes and in-betweens. You can see now I'm starting to populate all these in-betweens here. And it should block out the pole nicely. Okay, so I think this is good enough. I'm going to proceed by re-enabling my... Now, take note of this. Every time you have a linked information, right, you notice a green arrow and a link line, right? Whenever you see this, that means that the roto node is actually reading data. In this case, transform data from the tracker to the mask, right? That's why we see this green line here. All right, so now I'm going to re-enable my layers again. And then this time, I'm going to combine my mask, my roto mask, okay, with the final merge result. So first, select the result of the merge, okay, then shift select the roto node, and then press M to merge. Now, instead of over, double click on the merge and change it to under. Now, when you change to under, you notice the astronaut will disappear. That is fine, okay, because we need to go to the roto and we need to tell the roto mask what kind of operation that we want it to do. Okay, so instead of working out as an alpha only, we want to change it into a RGB and alpha for pre-multiply. And then you can see the mask now starts to work. So as I scrub through the timeline, you can see that the mask is actually working pretty well. The tracker is driving it pretty fine. Okay, at beyond frame 185, the mask will stop moving because we don't need it anymore. But you have to be very careful, make sure that the mask, right, doesn't cut into the astronaut. Otherwise, it will review the background through the astronaut. Okay, so if I can, I think I want to, at the last frame, I want to drag the mask and set a key so that the mask is out of the way. Okay, just put it out of the way. All right, so it will not interfere the rest of the comp. Okay, so now to add a final touch, to add a little bit more realism. Now, I'm going to hide the roto. Again, you can click on this button here so that we don't see the roto anymore. You can come back to adjust. You can adjust the feathering, right, so that the edge, right, will not be so harsh. Okay, let me just show you quickly how to do that. You can click on the mask and then select and then grab on the handles, right? Okay, just pull this out slightly so that you can create the feather. Okay, if I click on this needle area, you see now I create a much more realistic look for the mask, right? So the edge doesn't appear so harsh, all right? Now for this, I should have set the feathering up a little bit better. You can adjust the feathering here as well, right? So that it's more universal. You can see adjusting on the slider here, so down the edge, right, doesn't appear so harsh. You can press Q to preview this. Now it looks slightly better. Let me just bump it out a little bit more. Yeah, I think this looks good, but not too much, right? Yeah, now you can see the transition is a little bit better. I need to adjust the mask here maybe a little bit. You can see a little bit of the back, the playground is showing through the astronaut. Okay, but we can adjust that later. All right, so now we can hide this roto mask. And there's one more thing we need to do. Of course, you can see the diffuse and the shadow itself is very noisy. You can apply some blur to make it look nicer. Okay, and also we want to put a motion blur. Okay, because right now you can see there's motion blur in the plate, but there's no motion blur on the astronaut itself. So select the entire merge group here, and we want to put a motion blur between here and the mask. Okay. So on second thought, I think it will make sense to merge just the astronaut. We do not want to merge we do not want to apply the motion blur on the background because the background already has motion blur. So we're going to put it between this merge and here. So I'm going to select this node, they press tab, and then add motion blur. Okay, and then you can see now there's motion blur applied to the astronaut, and we can increase the sample to maybe 5. All right, and the shutter time, maybe reduce it to 0.45. Okay, vector detail, change it to, okay, just play with the sliders until you get a motion blur that matches the background. Okay, so this motion blur detects movement in the camera, and then, or rather in the plate, and then it will just apply it accordingly, and then you match the same direction. Okay, so you can scrub through, and then you can see whenever there's not much blur, everything will look nice and sharp. But when there is a step or everything, it will just turn, the blur will match the background. Okay, so once you're ready, and once you adjusted the mask to your heart's content, we can render this out. To render it out, we will go to write it out. So go over to the last merge node here, press tab and hit write. So go to write image. We're going to write it out as a MOV file. So click and then direct it to the location. I'm going to put it at astronaut playground, call it astronaut playground, and then .mov, and then click save. So it's going to detect it as a MOV file because I typed it in as a MOV, and instead of a ProRes codec, I'm going to give it a MPEG-4 video or H.264. Okay, frame rate is 25 frames per second. I'm going to render the entire range, and once you're ready, you just hit render, click OK, and now it's going to go and run through the entire range and render it out for me. Oh, as you can see, it's going to take quite a while to finish rendering. Okay, but I can show you a result that I've done previously. So this is what you can expect to see. Although technically speaking, this one is done on Blender, which is, the workflow is pretty similar. Okay, which I actually tracked and also use the track to drive the mask. Okay, so we will not wait for this to finish render, and I shall end the video now.